Hello everybody and welcome back to the Tech Team. Okay, so in today's video we are going to do a whole big video that we are going to cover all the basics in Python. If you don't want to see this video from just one video, you can go and watch my beginner series and my intermediate series that are out right now. But with that being said, let's jump right into the video. Okay, so if this is the first time that you open a programming language, first of all, welcome, because you have a whole new world to explore. So in this whole video, we are going to cover all the basics in Python. And I am using the text editor called Atom, but you can use whatever you want. You can use the Python idle, or whatever you want, PyCharm or anything that you want. So let's get started with the first thing that you need to know. Which is printing. So we print something by just say print, open and close parentheses, and write right here what we want to print. For example, hey. So when I run the program, you can see that we get hey right here. Really cool. Now the next thing that you need to know is that we have int, which are all of the integer numbers. We have float, all the decimal numbers. We have string, that in Python we call str, and we have bool, which is something that could either be true or false. That's really cool, but let's now see how we can use that. So let's create a variable first of all. What is a variable? You need to give your variable a name and set it equal to a value. For example, let's call mine num1. That stands for number 1. You can call your variable whatever you like, and let's say that num1 is equal to 10. So this is an integer. Sorry. Let's now create another variable that we are going to call num2, and let's say that is equal to 10 as well. And now we are going to learn a new thing about printing. So let's now print the answer is, we need to put a comma out of the string that we print. So the answer is a string, so we put a comma to access our variables, which are integer numbers. So we are going to say num1 plus num2, and when we run the program, you can see the answer is 20. Really cool. But there is actually a better way to do that, because if we need to use this thing num1 plus num2 lots of times in our program, it would be kind of annoying to write every time num1 plus num2, num1 plus num2. So what we can do is that we can create another variable called answer, and we can say that answer is equal to num1 plus num2. So what we can do right now is just type here answer, and when you see me let a line without anything, it's not because you have to do that, but if another programmer gets your code and he sees that all the variables are in one line without letting any other, all your printings are one line after, it's more like making your code look better so you can understand it better. So that's really it for variables right now. So let's move on to input. What is a user input that we are going to create? We are going to ask the user to tell us something. So in my case right now, we are going to ask the user to tell us her name. So to do that, we are going to say that name, we are creating a variable. You can name your variable again whatever you want. So name is equal to input. And what's interesting about input is that, do you see those parentheses right here? You can actually put something in them. So with an input you can also print something. So type your name, and let's come down here and say print hello, comma, the name. So let's run this program first of all so you can see what is going to happen. Type your name, Dennis. Hello, Dennis. So why that worked? Because we store our input inside this variable and then we call what we stored. So in my case, Dennis, if you wrote for example John, you will get back John. So that's really interesting, but let's create actually something a little bit more complicated with user input. So let's create a variable that we are going to call num1, again stands for number 1, and let's say that num1 is equal to 10, or no, sorry, num1 is equal to input. And now we are going to say type a number, actually type a number. Okay, and then we are going to create another variable that we are going to call number2, and we are going to say that number2 is equal to input as well. Type another number. Really nice. So now if we try to run the program, or when we print, the answer is num1 plus num2, this is actually not going to work because the user input don't know if what we are going to write is an integer, is a float, is a string, or is a boolean. So what we need to do is we need to say right here, there's actually two ways to do that. I am going to show you and the two ways. So we can say int like that and int like that, so the computer knows that what we are going to write right now is going to be integer numbers. So when we run the program, you can see, oops, we have an error. Let's run the program one more time. Oh, okay, I typed probably something wrong before. So the answer is 20. Everything works fine. And the other way to do that, which I recommend you do, is to put here int in the inputs. Okay, and we can just delete that here. And now you're going to see that everything works fine as well. But the other thing that I recommend you to do is to put float right here, which, if you remember, float are the numbers, are the decimal numbers, because before, if we put something like 10.5, it was not going to work. So with float right here, everything is going to work just fine. So let's now go to if statement. And let's create a small example. So we have our name variable that is equal to input type your name. So let's say that if the name is equal to something, then we want to get something. So to be more clear, if the name is equal to Dennis, then we want something to happen. So lots of things are going on right now. We have these two equal statements, and why we put those? Because we're not saying that something is equal to something. We're saying that, actually, that's what we're doing. We're not setting something equal to something else. We're not saying that the name is equal to 10. We are telling that the name, so we're telling that if the name is equal to Dennis, we're not setting up the name. We have already done that. The name is equal to input. But if the name, if the output that we get of the name is equal to Dennis, then we want to print out good. So when I run the program, type your name, if I type Dennis, we are going to get good. So let's say that if something else is the name, then we want something, then we want to get something else. So elif, the name, elif stands for else if. So else if the name is equal to John, then we want to print okay or nice. And else, so if the name is not Dennis and not John and is anything else, so when we say else, we're not putting else the name is equal to something. We're just saying else. We want to print okay. You can of course put more elif and more if you want, but let's now keep everything simple. Type your name. So if I do something like Costas, then we are going to get okay. So that's really cool, but let's now get to something a little bit more difficult, which are called for loops. So to create a for loop, we need to type for, then we need to create a variable. So for I in range, I am going to explain everything in just a second. So we have that for the I, our variable, in range from 1 to 1000. So if we now print, or to keep it simple, let's say from 1 to 10, and you need to do that. Oh, and when you put a colon, is because you want to know that whatever you write down is inside this for loop, or it's inside this if statement. Okay, so we want to print I, and when we run the program, you can see that we get 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Really nice. So you understand that we get all the numbers from 1 not to 10 all the way up to 9. So there is why that happens, but it's a big example right now to tell you. So you need to put every time one more number than you want to print. So right now we get all the numbers up to 10. That's really cool. You can put, for example, 3000, and you're going to get all the numbers up to 2999. You can see right here. And now let's move on to while loop. So think about you're doing push-ups and your friend tells you that you're going to do push-ups until you say stop. So you do the first push-ups and you say I can't anymore. Then you have to do another push-up. If you say stop, then you stop doing push-ups. So we call those while loops. So let's create our first our variable that we are going to call loop, and let's say that loop is equal to true. We're doing that because without that we had to write while true. So while loop, it's better to understand. So while true, think about that. And let's now create our input. So we need to create a variable called stop that we're going to say that is equal to input. Say stop if say stop if you want to what am I doing if you want to stop. Okay, so if right now the stop is equal to stop, then what we want to happen is we want to break the while loop. So we can do something like that. So the while loop will just stop asking. So when we run the program, say stop if you want to stop. So if I say hey, it's going to ask me again, say stop if you want to stop. If I say nope, say stop if you want to stop. And now if I say something like stop, we are going to get nothing because the loop just break. So there is another way to break the loop, is by saying loop is equal to false. So when we run the program, if I type stop, oops, something went wrong. Okay, so if we type stop right now, everything works. Loop is equal to false. That's really cool, but let's create actually another thing with the loops, with while loop. So let's delete this whole while loop and let's create an input. So we are going to call name is equal to input, and now let's say while the name is not. So when you put something like that, you mean while something is not equal to Dennis, print. Okay, so let's run the program. Okay, so actually we want to print something here. For example, type your name, and we want to put this inside this while loop. Okay, so we have an no, we want to put it outside the while loop. What I did. Sorry. And inside the while loop, let's try this. Type your name. If I say John, type your name. If I say, let's say Dennis, actually, we get okay. So that's really cool, and I think while loops are really easy to understand actually. So let's now create our first list. So think of a list at the supermarket. You want to get apples, you want to get, I don't know, probably some cheese and all that stuff. Think now that when you create a list at the supermarket, you get a paper and you write, for example, in one paper everything you want. Now think that you had to get, for example, for every single thing, for the apples, you want to put it in one paper only. Then you get another paper. Cheese, then you get another paper. Okay, so that's why lists are really important, because if we don't had list, we had to create a new variable for every single thing. So lists are really nice, and they made our lives easier. So let's create our first list that we're going to call array, which is close to the same thing of a list. Just think it as the same thing right now. And let's say that an array is equal to a list. So to create a list, you need to put these brackets right here, and then you want to say what you want this list to have. So we want an apple, comma, after every single element in your list, and we want some cheese. Okay, I hope I spelled it right. And now when I print the array, you can see that we get apple and cheese. So something really important that you need to know is that Python reads the code from the first line to the end, so it doesn't read the code all at once. So if we print array here and then we add another value inside this array, we are going to get first of all the array like that with apple and cheese, and then if we print the array again with another element, we are going to get the array with apple and cheese and another element. So let's do that right now. Let's say array dot append. So now we are going to append a value. We are going to add a value in our array. So for example, let's add, I don't know, let's add a chicken. I think I spelled it right, and let's print the array again. So when we run the program, you can see that we get apple and cheese and apple and cheese and chicken. So now let's delete a value from our array. So let's say array dot remove, and let's say that we want to remove the apple. Okay, so now, sorry, we need to print it. So when we run the program, we have apple, cheese, and chicken, and cheese and chicken, because we just deleted the apple. That's it for arrays, and let's now move on to the last thing that we're going to learn in this beginner video, which is going to be function. So let's say that defined, that's how we create a function, and let's say, for example, name. Here we give our name of the function, so we call this function name. We need to open and close parentheses, and inside this function we need to print, for example, hey. Now if I run the program, nothing is going to happen. Why? Because a function doesn't do anything if we don't call it. So to call our function, we need to get outside of the function and say name like that. So now we are going to get hey. Let's create now something a little bit more complicated. Let's add inside those parentheses the word, for example, let's add your, I don't know, I don't have any ideas. We're going to change it in a little bit. So what we're going to do right now is that we're going to say right here your plus not inside here, what am I doing, sorry guys. We're going to print your plus your like that. So let's actually, I have an idea, let's call this email. Think about it as a variable, so think that this is a variable, and let's say email right here. Actually, let's reverse this. I know this is really complicated, just wait a second and you're going to understand every single thing. So just give me a second. What's happening here? Your plus email. Okay, now you're going to understand what is going to happen. So right here we are going to say email, and when I run the program, stick with me for a second, we get an error. Okay, probably we get your email, so we need to add a space right here, and we get your email. So that's really cool. So how does this work? For example, not for example, at first, because I know this was really complicated. So we add the variable right here, that what that variable does is nothing. It just stays there as 0, nothing. So right here we print your plus the email. Okay, so plus this variable. Right now we're printing nothing. Okay, we're just printing your. And what we do right now is inside this name, so we call our function and we put that the email is a string email. So we are printing actually your email. So we changed this email and we called it email like that. So when I run the program, we get your email. That's really cool. And the last thing about functions that we are going to learn is we have, let's delete that and let's create another function called, for example num1, and let's say num. Okay, so right now this variable is nothing. So let's actually return right now num plus 5. So the only thing left to do is say that the num1 and put what we want our num variable to be. So let's say 5, and when we run, or no, let's print here so we're going to print so just stick with me, we get 10. So what is going on here? We have our function num1 with a variable, think it of a variable, so num1, and we are going to return num plus 5, and then we say that we're going to print the num1, so we say that we're going to print our function, and we say that the num is equal to 5, so it's like saying return 5 plus 5, and we of course going to get 10. So yeah guys, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed. Write in the comments if you liked it, so I know that I can do more of these big full tutorials. And that's it for this tutorial. I will see you all guys in the next video. Don't forget to smash this like button and subscribe to the channel, and goodbye.